Good morning, YouTubers, and welcome once again to the Eastern Division of the Stinkbug Works, that super secret research and development division of Dr. Jet Laboratories. Anyway, we're here to talk about progress on, what would this be? This is like prototype number 5 of the Jet Stepper. Let's talk about what I've done. So I've mounted a servo in here. I found a real tiny little cheap Chinese servo, metal geared, smaller than a 9-gram. So I glued it in here with my typical 1/32 music wire and 1/16 inch capillary tube bearing bushing seal, and then back to 1/32 wire. And then where it mounts in the servo here, I put some of that capillary tube. The whole point of doing that is so it gets a little flex here, because this end of the rudder swings through a weird arc. It should be perpendicular to the pivot. And back when I was flying airplanes, we would do this intentionally to give differential throw on ailerons. So what that does effectively is it gives differential throw on rudder. Since you only turn one direction in these things anyway, and modern radios, you can have a limit on left and right travel. That's not so big of an issue, but just something to look out for. So that's glued in. What I did with the motor is I put a couple of little blocks so I could put a blob of glue. I thought that would be easier to break off and swap out motors and such. My receiver I coated in conformal coating, and then I took some of that non-expanding glue and just ran a little bead right down here and glued it down. I can just break it out whenever I need to. The whole point is keep it light. This is one of those 26 millimeter props you get from OSE. Steve has a bunch of these there. I think Gropner makes them. They're decent props, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. Somebody asked about props, and let me show you what I've found for this particular one that I'm using a 2 millimeter shaft. Remember, I had the option of going to 4 millimeter. So these are the 26 millimeter props that are on there, and Steve sells those, and these are real decent props. The question is, can this motor combination push this prop? And we'll find out. There's also these smaller props. Again, it's a 2 millimeter threaded hub, and they're a smaller prop and a much flatter pitch. It looks like about a 1.2 pitch. So these might be good, Steve, if you have a 7,000 kV outrunner. Outrunner motors generally have more torque than an in-rotor runner just because of the geometry of where the magnets are. So this might be a good consideration for a high kV, relatively high torque motor. Then there's these Ribose Props. And these this particular one is in 2 millimeter, but I've seen these in 4 millimeters as well. They make small props, but I'm looking for a pointer here. The blades, it's just a piece of sheet metal that appears attached to the hub in some manufacturing process. So if you were to use these things, you'd probably want to do a lot of shaping on these blades here, because they're just flat pieces of metal. I mean, they'll work, and they're generally intended for scale boats that, travel at scale speeds, and the people that build those things aren't really concerned with high efficiency in their propellers. They just want to move them along. Then I have one final thing, and maybe some of you can help me out. I bought a couple of these props, some years ago, and I can't remember where, and they may have come from Russia. They may have come from Ukraine, Eastern Europe somewhere, might have been Germany. But now get a load of these props. The hub is drilled 1.5 millimeter, but get a load of the hub by unscrewing this cone that's on the end of this. Why, Shazam, there is a little drive dog. I think it's about 20 millimeters. Little tiny drive dog prop. This drive dog shaft assembly you would put onto a 1.5 millimeter shaft with green sauce. And bingo, look at this. Really nice. Notice how nicely they shape this side, and it's so tiny it won't fit on my balancer. But get a load of these. So my question to you guys is, where did I get these? Do these look familiar to any of you? These might be the ticket for this. I could switch over to a 1.5 millimeter shaft. I've got some little 1.5 millimeter ball bearings. You could run a prop like this that's easily swappable, create another wheel collar drive shaft arrangement somehow, and voila. So my question is, do these look familiar? Does anybody recognize these? Where was the place I got these? I should have kept a record, because these are really nice, really little props. So that's kind of what I wanted to share for Steve. He was asking about props. Here's another thing too. Remember I talked about getting this angle flat and raising it up a little bit. Take a look at a comparison between these two. I might stick the video of this thing running, and you'll see that the back end rides fairly high in the water and the bow rides fairly low. And so you can see I've dropped the back end down about 1/4 inch. So this may be a little better running than this as far as appearance and attitude. So we'll see. That's a prototype. Again, this is quick and dirty. And here, let me move my trash can. And I'm going to take the lessons I learned on this and build 1 or 2 more that'll be pretty. The paper mache, while it looks fun, it has a couple of things I don't like so much. It doesn't stick really well to the foam, and sometimes you can get under it, and I'm afraid about water getting under it, and especially on these edges, so I would spray paint along here at an angle like this, and then try to seal it with the slightly wet clear. The silk span and tape just worked a lot better. So this is going to be cheap. It's experimental. When I'm done with this thing will get stripped down and go into Neverland. Okay, so now this is ready to go. I think I pretty much covered everything. Steve was asking about props, and so here's what I have for small props. And if somebody in Eastern Europe looking at these little props going, oh, I know who makes those. It's this guy over here. I should have kept a record of it. Anyway, until next time, jet out.